July 1st marks the beginning of a new fiscal year here in the state of Georgia, and July 1st is also the traditional date that lawmakers will set for new legislation set to go into effect. These bills have been passed by the recent session of the Georgia General Assembly and subsequently signed by Governor Brian Kemp, set to go into effect Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Happily always to be joined by my friend and co-worker and colleague Rick Folbaum. I'm Tim Darnell, and this is the edition of Political Update here on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. Rick, we typically will talk about a number of statewide or national political issues in every political update, but this edition is kind of unique. We are focusing specifically on new laws that are set to take effect Tuesday, July 1st, 2025, and it's really spurred on by the fact that on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com, there always has been a tremendous amount of interest from our amazing viewers and readers as far as what new laws they have to keep in mind moving forward as we move into the second half of 2025. And that's really the impetus behind what we're talking about today.
Well, I think I understand why people are so interested in this, because obviously these are laws that affect everyone here in the state of Georgia. Some of them are going to require some potential changes in behavior on the part of some people, part of some organizations, some businesses, some school districts, and we'll talk about that. But these are big things that are new as of July 1st. And so the fact that there's a lot of interest, and traditionally a lot of interest in these types of stories each year, I think this should not come as a surprise.
Well, lawmakers, when they convene from January through mid to late March for a 40-day working legislative session here in Georgia, they will address issues that they feel are motivated by what they see as a political or legal necessity, and yet some laws, as in the first one that we're going to discuss, are really spurred on by tragedies and horrific circumstances. We're talking, of course, about last year's deadly Appalachia High School shooting, and this has prompted lawmakers to create a bill known as Ricky and Alyssas Law. Now, this is a bill that is named for Richard Aspinwall, one of the casualties of last year's Appalachia High School shooting here in Metro Atlanta in Widener, Georgia, Barrow County. And it's also partially named after a young lady who was the victim of a 2018 school shooting in Parkland, Florida. Take us through this bill.
And her name is Alyssa and I'm very familiar with her and her family, having worked in Miami at the time of the shooting in Parkland, Florida, the massacre there at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. So unfortunately, I cover both of these shootings that involve both of these two victims whose names are attached to this particular bill. So let's talk about it. It's known as the Ricky and Alyssas Law. And this is legislation that mandates that all public K through 12 schools install mobile panic alert systems that directly connect to emergency services. It also requires real-time digital mapping of schools to aid first responders who are called into a scene when there is an active shooter situation. And this, I think, is what people expect from their lawmakers, that they look at, they size up the situation. This is the world that we live in right now, and what do we need to do to address some of the shortcomings? How can we make corrections in our laws that might prevent tragedies like school shootings, for example, from happening again? And this technology is something that's been identified as being very helpful. We should mention that also this technology does have some flaws, so it will be interesting to see exactly how all of this plays out, because we have covered false alarms where teachers have pressed the button inadvertently or set off the button inadvertently, which of course leads to lockdowns and all kinds of things that aren't necessary. But for the most part, I think that everyone's intentions are good here, that this technology, if used properly and if the sort of the kinks are worked out, could be very helpful in giving first responders an immediate heads up when there is a sign of danger. This bill will require educators to wear or to have on them some kind of a device that will allow them to easily sort of tap in to notify first responders, notify emergency personnel that there is a situation that is unfolding. And again, as we've learned from these awful cases, the quicker first responders are able to get to the scene, the more lives are saved. And in the case of the Parkland shooting, of course, that was a terrible tragedy in that the one school resource officer who was assigned to that school in South Florida, even as he heard shots on the inside of the building, did not go inside to confront the active shooter. Many people say leading to a lot more lives lost than could have and should have been. And so, I think that a lot of people are hopeful that this kind of technology and maybe the other kinds of technology that's developed, in the future is something that could potentially be the answer to this epidemic of mass shootings, many of which take place in our schools.
Regarding how first responders actually arrive on scene and what they're able to accomplish once they arrive, one of the more interesting aspects of the bill to me is that it will require school districts to procure digital layouts of their buildings that they will present hopefully to law enforcement when they arrive on the scene of a major incident like this. We've seen other school shootings in other parts of the nation where first responders and law enforcement did not enter the premises immediately for whatever reason, perhaps an unfamiliarity with the school layout. Hopefully this bill will address that as well moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, all of us who use technology on a daily basis know that it has many applications, many of which make our lives easier when it comes to, for example, GPS and trying to find your way to an unfamiliar location. So imagine being a first responder and being responsible for, responding to emergencies at any number of places, from schools to office buildings to, you name it. Having the ability to look at, for example, an app or something on a mobile device that would allow that first responder to see exactly where this emergency is unfolding can only be a good thing.
Certainly can be. And moving on, we began our discussion with a look at laws that are being enacted, going into effect in just a few days, July 1st, Tuesday, 2025, that have been spawned by crime and tragedy. Moving on to a bill that lawmakers debated rather heavily, but did indeed pass, not in any kind of bipartisan format, we should say, is the Wrongful Convictions Act. This is a bill that was prompted by Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis's historic 2018 indictment of then former President Donald Trump and more than a dozen of his GOP allies in an alleged attempt to overturn the results of Georgia's 2020 presidential election. This bill, and that is going into effect July 1st, will allow anyone who has been convicted or wrongly convicted of a crime or whose indictment or charges have been issued by a prosecuting attorney who has since been disqualified from the case to recoup their legal damages. There are other cases that I'm sure lawmakers had in mind when they were crafting this, but this was something that you have to just look at as a direct response to what Republicans and Donald Trump supporters saw as a political persecution of the 45th and now the 47th president of the United States.
That's right. And I think some people might say, you might as well put Fani Willis's name on the bill, the way that other bills are named for people who provide the impetus for them. She is absolutely the reason why Republicans wanted to pass this law. You talk about the persecution that Republicans and all of the co-defendants in the Donald Trump election interference case feel as though they were targeted and wrongly targeted by a prosecutor who is still in the process of being sort of judged as to whether or not she's qualified to stay on that case. And we've already had another round of elections, and we're still litigating the 2020 election interference case that Fani Willis brought. But again, her conduct is still being looked at. Has not been a final determination. But again, just the fact that her conduct has been called into question as it has, I think was really all of the ammunition that Republicans needed in terms of getting the momentum and support for a bill like this that would allow, we should say, provisions here for defendants to recover attorney's fees if they successfully disqualify a prosecuting attorney for misconduct. And you have to think that this will lead now to other criminal defendants looking for ways not just to defend themselves against the charges that they're facing, but perhaps to go after the people who have leveled those charges, namely the prosecutors who are pursuing the case.
And we are still waiting to hear from even if the Georgia Supreme Court will offer any ruling as to whether or not the district attorney will be disqualified from her prosecution of now President Donald Trump relating to that historic indictment of 2018. Some of the other bills that are going into effect, new laws going into effect on July 1st, you and I were speaking before we began recording this edition of Political Update on Atlanta News First and atlantanewsfirst.com. Several education-related bills, further funding of the Quality Basic Education Act that was passed. I was actually interning at the state capitol back in 1985 when lawmakers passed this historic bill, and we are still seemingly trying to improve the state's quality level of education across the board, trying to raise SAT scores and reading and aptitude scores. But one bill that also caught your attention was the excuse me if I can say it correctly, the Dignity and Pay Act.
Yeah. So this is the Dignity and Pay Act. It's Senate Bill 55. Employers now will be prohibited from paying a person who has a disability less than the federal minimum wage. You know, a lot of employers want to bring in people who have special needs and disabilities to employ them, to give them opportunities to be a part of the workforce. Of course, this is a very important thing for, I think, not just the employees who get a chance to have a job and all of the dignity that goes along with that, but also employers who are able to say, hey, we reach out to the community, we welcome all potential employees, no matter what their challenges or disabilities or special needs may be. But what has been found is that a lot of times those employers are not paying minimum wage to these special needs workers. And this is a bill that aims to rectify that. And we're not just talking about maybe 50 cents or $1 less. We're talking about pennies per hour that a lot of these workers were being paid, according to the lawmakers who were behind this effort. And so now this is a bill that will restore and will require employers to pay those special needs employees the same wage as they would pay anybody else.
Not just an economic justification for this particular bill, and hopefully that will correct what you're describing is a pretty widespread cause or that it's happening among here in Georgia. Obviously, lawmakers saw a need to address that issue, and hopefully they have. And that's just an encapsulation of some of the many, many new laws and regulations taking effect Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com has a comprehensive list of all of the new laws, rules, and regulations taking effect, everything from how school systems classify male and female participation in high school athletic events to the banning or prohibiting or limiting the use of cell phones in schools. Many, many other new laws and regulations taking effect on Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com has a comprehensive list of all of the new regulations going into effect in just a few days. For Rick Fulbaum, I'm Tim Darnell. Thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Political Update on Atlanta News First and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. Thank you for watching Political Updates from Atlanta News First Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and political updates, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Listen to more of our political update podcasts by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.